If you've watched parts 1 and 2 of the long length partials critical analysis, consider this a palate cleanser before part 3, which will be heavy on muscle torque curves, moment arms, and resistance torque. This is the cover that had my parents asking, "What the hell are you getting into?" What? You don't want me to shave, oil up, and use performance enhancing drugs? My parents were so strict. Actually, at the time, 1973, no internet, not many books in bookstores and libraries on weight training. Health club chains weren't that prominent. So options were limited if you wanted to learn about weight training. And on every newsstand, you found a number of muscle magazines every month. So this was the most accessible format to learn from. Much later, I realized that 98% of what I learned from the magazines was junk, but you had to start somewhere. This magazine may well have been named Arnold, since he was all over the place. The cover, 4 articles, a column, and several ads, some for his courses, most for Weider products. 2 pictures of Arnold on the table of contents, and that's all Arnold from various places in the magazine on the right. Ever see such mind-blowing biceps? Well, yes, on the cover. In addition to the previous pictures, these were also in the issue. Now, I tried the Arnold's Super Arm Blaster and was rudely surprised when it dug into my ribs, which they somehow forgot to mention in the ads. Also, the whole idea that it keeps you from cheating on the curl is ironic considering some of the comments we'll see later. And what is with all the Ks? Cambered curling bar. What, you couldn't figure out a K word for bar? Cutting it kind of close there, no? There is one 2-page spread devoted to his main rival at the time, Sergio Oliva. I don't think they ended up competing against each other that year, but Arnold won the magazine exposure competition. Let me read the captions. While lesser mortals like Newbray, Arnold, and Waller talk, the myth is quiet, all set to repossess his Mr. Olympia title. And his friend predicts Sergio will win. Absolutely unbelievable. Sergio's past posing weakness has greatly improved, we hear. Author Wayne says Arnold will faint this time from shock when he sets eyes on the awesome Cuban emigre. Watching Sergio trains to experience the impossible, say witnesses to his workouts. Will Joe Weider's terribly infantile, would-be unconquerable, blue-eyed hero, Arnold Schwarzenegger, meet his bodybuilding Waterloo competing against Sergio, as Rick Wayne predicts? The myth calmly displays his incredible physique, almost 22-inch arms, minuscule and muscular 31-inch waist, and flawless legs. All his friends say that nothing will stop him this time. This actually is an interesting article by his physical therapist, about 4 pages devoted to his recuperation from knee surgery. I'll read the captions and a few key paragraphs. Bottom left. It presented a unique situation. Here was a young man whose career as a professional bodybuilder was at stake. However, under the expert guidance of Mr. Berg, Arnold grins optimistically as he rapidly recovers from his serious knee injury. The stuff that champions are made of is what caused the king of bodybuilders to make such a fast and thorough recovery. Guts, determination, sensible nutrition. The zest to live a complete and robust life. Careful attention to detail, following correct scientific therapy methods, and always driving himself sensibly to his limit allowed Arnold to overcome his unfortunate debility almost overnight, looking bigger and better than ever. And on the right, this photo was taken on June 8th. Just look at this proof of Arnold's swift muscular recovery. Joe Weider's relentless concern and expert guidance, combined with the king's determination, has caused this ever-popular Mr. Olympia to look bigger and better than ever before. Here's a few key lines from the article itself. The amount of atrophy and strength was tremendous in Arnold's case. The leg that was operated on measured 2 inches smaller, and the range of movement was decreased from a normal 130 degrees to a mere 40 degrees. The injured leg was so weak after surgery that Arnold barely able to perform a straight leg raise without any resistance. The crushing nature of Arnold's injury, which occurred when a posing platform collapsed while he was doing a kneeling pose, causing him to hit the floor in this unnatural position, which placed tremendous stress on the structures which support the knee and tore the medial meniscus of his left knee, which had to be surgically removed. Since most of the quadriceps attached to the patella of the knee, any loss of movement would result in less muscle size, strength, and muscle definition. Also, the hamstrings would be diminished in capacity and also show some atrophy. Following surgery, he spent 10 days in the hospital and another 30 days on crutches. During this period, he was unable to train because the possibility of re-injury during this time following surgery prevented him from any workout whatsoever. Here he goes into detail on the rehab protocol, which, except for the, quote, wisdom of his trainer Joe Weider, sounds like everyone else's rehab protocol. He learned how to walk on crutches before the surgery. Immediately following the surgery with a cast on, he did quad and hamstring setting exercises, so isometrics. Then after the cast was removed, therapy started in a warm whirlpool, then manual resistance, and then progressed to a bike. Instead of weights for leg extensions and leg curls, like many physical therapists at the time, he preferred to use the orthotron, an isokinetic device, which I believe is no longer prominent in physical therapy. There are no specific dates or time frames listed in the article. He finishes with how to avoid and what to do if you have a knee injury, all common sense, and one I particularly like. Don't go into a full deep knee bend. You may drop just below 90 degrees of knee flexion, but any deeper places an abnormal amount of stress on the knee ligaments and will eventually stretch them or damage them. They don't shrink back to normal size. Sounds familiar. Before we get to the main event, this from 2 years prior, the January 1971 issue. Different magazine, different publisher. Quote, it is reported that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Franco Columbo have paid Arthur Jones a visit and have had some workouts on some of the new machines. They found them very different from working out with barbells. Arnold remarked, in the past I have had trouble standing up after training, but this is the first time I've had trouble lying down. Franco Columbo was so sore after his first workout that he could hardly walk for several days. Casey Viator, who was also training on the machines, recently squatted 20 reps with 400, which is a rather remarkable performance. He subsequently did 12 more with 435 after a 3-minute rest. Franco Columbo did 12 by 400 and 7 by 435. He's now weighing 174. Arnold never does heavy squats, and so most of his leg work is leg extensions and leg curls, finishing up with some rather light squats. The boys are all interested in training on these machines for the very evident results that they have received so rapidly. And back to 1973. Recently, Kim Wood mentioned on Facebook that the actual author was Ernest Cottrell, whose name is on the table of contents as an editor, and he wrote for many of the magazines. There aren't a lot of pictures with this article, so after the next slide, it will just be random pages from the rest of the magazine while I attempt to read this out loud. The caption of this picture is, Mighty Arnold Schwarzenegger and Franco Columbo thoroughly test the popular and controversial Nautilus machines. Just how does the Nautilus stack up to conventional barbells, dumbbells, pulleys, etc.? These two great champions will tell you the facts without mincing words. That Nautilus machine is right there in the middle of the floor, right smack in the middle of the doorway, in fact, as you walk into the famous Gold's Gymnasium in Venice Beach, California, where all the top West Coast bodybuilders work out. It is standing there boldly and with seeming arrogance, inviting you to try it. How about a workout, it seems to taunt. Want to build a flawless Herculean physique? The challenge is there without any doubt, but is this robust invitation really a fact, or is it simply insidious fiction spawned by unscrupulous business interests and then spread throughout the world of bodybuilding like a pungent spore? Is the widespread publicity of these machines in reality a business-nurtured spore that settles after its windy voyage, develops and grows uncontrollably, and then attempts to suffocate the senses and energies, similar to the parasitic fungus called mistletoe that attacks the mighty oak and attempts to drain its life fluid. The mistletoe has also gained popular acceptance due to colorful stories that distort its real purpose. But it is only a puny parasite that doesn't either destroy or enhance the mighty oak. It is content to simply live off the oak's might, taking nourishment from it and not offering anything. Is this the boring story of the Nautilus Machines too? Oh boy. We have never before made an attempt to analyze the Nautilus Machines because we honestly felt they were far too simple and mundane in operation to be of any but the most minor value to the serious bodybuilder. Modern bodybuilding is a serious, sophisticated, and rather complicated sport. It is not so simple as to be purely mechanical as some would like us to believe, especially not if the mechanical implements are very limited. Bodybuilding is a fine scientific and artistic blend of the mechanics involved and the careful utilization of basic mechanical functions which vary considerably in operation and individual use of equipment. And as a result, modern bodybuilding has become so sophisticated that it can be considered a true art form. It is, in fact, an art and not a science. True, an artist needs the brushes, paints, canvas, etc. in order to produce a fine painting. And he also needs the proper training in order to know how to use his tools and subject, etc. But his art is only fully developed when his intrinsic knowledge of his tools, abilities, and so forth are realistically coordinated in proper context to his desired purpose. The best laid plans of the aspiring artist can easily be upset if he but overlooks such a small thing as his brushes. The quality and texture of his end product is definitely controlled by his choice of tools. No matter how much schooling, experience, or enthusiasm he has, if these tools are not adequate, the end product, the painting, will show this lack. So it is with the bodybuilder too. The art of bodybuilding is also very dependent upon the right tools for the best job. This fact cannot be denied or overlooked. The real-life painting of the bodybuilder, his physique, will be developed to its fullest only when the artist, the bodybuilder, uses the finest tools. Just imagine what a Rembrandt would look like if it were painted with a third grader's paste brush, for instance. We have kept quiet about the famous Nautilus machines for a period of 2 years. This was to permit the champions and other up-and-coming stars to try out these machines, to utilize them and find out if they are beneficial to the modern bodybuilder in actual practice instead of theory alone. We wanted to see what could actually be produced in the form of muscularity and size as opposed to the standard exercise equipment already proven and in use throughout the world today. 2 years is definitely enough time to investigate the worth of any piece of bodybuilding equipment. During this 2 years of silence on our part in the pages of Muscle Builder, the creator of the Nautilus machines, Arthur Jones, has been writing numerous articles and extolling their benefits. He has also invited bodybuilding stars to come to Florida to try out his machines and see what effect they can have on their already superb physiques. We kept quiet during this time, awaiting the professional opinion of these great bodybuilding stars as they trained on the Nautilus machines and took Arthur Jones' instruction. Arthur Jones has been expounding the benefits of his machines in Iron Man magazine for some time. Naturally, we believe that Peary Rader, editor and publisher of Iron Man, is a very honorable man and will print only the truth. But, over a period of time, Iron Man magazine was filled with the Nautilus machines and their benefits until it almost dominated the magazine, creating the impression that the Nautilus machines were the greatest bodybuilding invention of the last decade, even the last 2 or 3 decades. Since Peary Rader is supposed to be an honorable man, giving all sides of the situation in his magazine, a lot of readers and bodybuilders throughout America gave great credence to the extensive claims made in behalf of these Nautilus machines. Peary Rader, in lending his magazine his personal opinion and giving space to the Nautilus machines and Iron Man, actually created acceptance by him and therefore made inroads into bodybuilding. After all, isn't this the sort of honorable, trustworthy thing to be believed by bodybuilders everywhere? We do not understand why Peary Rader only permitted the pros and not the opposite. The only conclusion we can honestly reach is that either Peary Rader is not a great expert on physical fitness, or he has compromised the ideals of Iron Man by permitting Arthur Jones to publish his articles without any opposite opinion. Now, after 2 years of the Nautilus machines being put to use, we have decided to interview these stars who have derived the machine's benefits. This two-part article will let you focus in on the facts you haven't read about, and as usual, Muscle Builder doesn't pull any punches. It is devoted to the truth no matter how much it upsets the proverbial apple cart. We have absolutely nothing against Arthur Jones and nothing against his Nautilus machines. After all, everybody and everything has its place. We are only interested in presenting another piece of exercise apparatus that could be useful to the bodybuilding if it is really useful, and if it is not useful, to say it is not. If it does have some benefits, we will expose these benefits and make the readers of Muscle Builder aware of its good and bad points. In this spirit, this investigation has taken place. This article will deal with the opinions of the top bodybuilding champions and near champions, such persons as Arnold Schwarzenegger, who, as we all know, is the undisputed king of bodybuilders. Arnold and Mr. Universe, Franco Columbo, another great bodybuilding champion, both went to Florida to test these miracle Nautilus machines at the invitation of Arthur Jones himself. We have also interviewed Ken Waller, still another champion that you've seen often in Muscle Builder. Ken is chief instructor at Gold's Gym, where the top champs work out. He is in excellent position to tell us exactly what the numerous stars feel about the Nautilus machines after giving these machines more than a fair try. Ken has also used the Nautilus machines extensively in his quest to further improve his championship physique. The famous Vince Gironda has considerable comment on these machines, and he's a man who knows that the subjects of physiology, anatomy, etc., very well, to put it mildly. Also, we have a very promising up-and-coming bodybuilding star, Roger Callard, who worked with Arthur Jones in the development and testing of the machines. He will give you some inside information about the machines, too. After all, these stars will tell you exactly what they have to say about the machines, plus from their communication with Sergio Oliva, Casey Viator, and others, what all the stars say about these controversial machines. Our first interview will be with three-time Mr. Olympia winner Arnold Schwarzenegger. Joe Weider. Arnold, tell me first what your general opinions are concerning the Nautilus machines. Arnold. I feel the Nautilus machines are far too strict in their exercise application and are too restricted to certain muscle groups, Joe, because they are limited, extremely limited, as far as movement is concerned. And this, in turn, limits muscle growth. Joe. Do you mean by this that there isn't enough peripheral movement, natural movement outside the strict mechanical groove during the performance of the exercise, to engage the muscles more thoroughly and from slightly different angles as nature originally intended? Arnold. Yes, that's exactly what I mean, Joe. For instance, in the pullover exercise on the Nautilus machines, the resistance is confined to one and only one direct movement, as if the bodybuilder is nothing but a senseless robot. It just isn't natural, Joe. I feel sort of stupid. Like it would feel, I imagine, if Parnelli Jones were to attempt to express and improve his driving talents by using a child's slot car game. Joe. Then you don't believe the Nautilus machines can compete with the proven methods of weight training, the methods with barbells, dumbbells, etc., you have used so successfully to build your prize-winning physique. Arnold. Definitely not. I don't feel that the Nautilus machines even come close to training with the standard barbell, dumbbell, and pulley equipment, Joe. It's my opinion that there's no comparison at all. Also, there is... Joe, pardon me for interrupting you, Arnold, but I'd like to let our readers hear a little more about this blunt statement you just made. Could we talk further on the subject of comparison between the Nautilus machine and the standard equipment now being used successfully in gyms everywhere? Sure, Joe. This is a very important fact that should be aired. Joe. Why is there no contest between the two, the standard equipment being the winner? Why do you feel that it is this cut and dried? Arnold. I don't just feel it, Joe. I know it. After using the Nautilus very extensively in search of something new that would allow me to make greater improvement in my bodybuilding career, I now know that I can make far superior progress with a simple barbell and flat bench than with a $700 Nautilus machine, and without injuries. You see, Joe, with a regular barbell, I can do a dozen variations of the pullover exercise. Even if I do only one type of pullover, with a regular barbell, I can shift my shoulders and move my elbows in or out, or I can arch my back. I can do them in a decline position. I can straighten out my forearms for a different degree and angle of resistance, etc. There's practically no end to the variations, Joe. And when I'm grinding out those last few reps, this feature of altering the position of my skeletal structure while using barbells brings all the muscles into complete play and decreases my chances of injury and forced layoff. When certain muscles or sections of the same muscle are fatigued to their limit, a slight movement here and there is necessary to bring into play the other less fatigued muscles or sections of muscles in order to fully develop them and eliminate dangerous strain. This is not the natural way, Joe, and not the unnatural mechanical way of the Nautilus machines. Joe. Yes, I know, Arnold. That was my experience with these machines, too. Why don't we discuss those injuries you just mentioned? Just what kind of injuries did you experience? Arnold. Since the Nautilus machines don't allow my arms to move naturally, as I just mentioned, I received some injuries in my rib cage. The muscles in between my ribs got torn a little bit, and my pecs were torn, too. This isn't right. As you know, Joe, I work out hard, damn hard, with regular equipment, and I very seldom get injuries unless by some freak accident. Joe, no, it isn't right, Arnold. You work out the hardest of any bodybuilder I've ever seen. You use heavy weights and really push yourself. Now, why do you think the Nautilus machines cause so many of these injuries you've received and the injuries that I've heard about that others sustain from using the equipment? Arnold. Well, besides the pullover contraption I already mentioned, let's take the triceps extension, for instance. I got unbelievable pain in my elbows, much like the common and very painful tennis elbow. The triceps extension movement is far too strict and doesn't allow the arms to move in any direction but one. And this single movement, due to the way the arms are held captive, places undue strain on the elbow joint. This terrible pain I developed on this Nautilus machine forced me to stop using it too. Joe. This is really a discredit to a piece of exercise equipment when it causes such an injury. I know personally that you normally blast your triceps like mad and develop massive muscle from standard equipment and not get injured. Arnold. Right, I was really disappointed, Joe. I also had problems with the biceps curling machine. For instance, in the lower bicep, I got a feeling that the biceps are forming a number of tears, and that made me afraid of the whole thing. Joe. I hear it's a fact that some bodybuilders in the gym actually did rip their biceps. Arnold. Yes, they did rip their biceps. And I almost tore my pecs, before I stopped using that ridiculous machine. I had to lay off for a while, and I don't like that. It shouldn't happen, and it's dangerous, Joe. No bodybuilder wants to be injured, let's face it. A lot of us had to experience forced layoffs. That pullover machine injured my shoulders too, not once, but many times. I kept trying, though, to see if it had any merit, but no more. I think this equipment is very dangerous. Joe. It's sad, too. Everybody I've talked to feels the same way. That's not good for bodybuilding at all. Exercise equipment should always be safe, progressive, and producing. Arnold. I agree, Joe. For instance, I'm a professional bodybuilder and I cannot afford to be laid off due to injuries. It's like closing my business down. Joe. How did the Nautilus machines rate with you as far as creating good, solid muscular growth? Arnold. Ugh, Joe. It doesn't even come close to regular barbell and dumbbell training. The Nautilus system alone doesn't make sense. Joe. I interviewed Ken Waller, Franco Columbo, Vince Gironda, and many others, and they all agree that what can be obtained from the Nautilus machines can also be obtained better and quicker from barbells, dumbbells, and any of the other common pieces of gym equipment. As a matter of fact, even small home gym equipment is far superior to them. Arnold. This is a fact. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Joe. Also, Arnold, these experienced bodybuilders state that when they are using the Nautilus curling machine, the arm is forced into an uncomfortable position while curling, and elbow injuries and extreme discomfort is common. I know one thing, my elbow joints were sure tender after that workout I had the other day. I'm glad I didn't overdo it. Arnold. Yes, I know only too well. Also, Joe, you can't develop a high peak in the biceps because you cannot turn the wrists. You are just as confined with this machine as with the others. The lack of natural movement is very conspicuous. Joe. Ken Waller tells me that he lost 3/4 of an inch off his arms using this machine, plus he lost all of his fine definition. Arnold. I'm sorry to say it, but so did I, and I really gave the biceps curling machine a good honest test. After all, being a professional bodybuilder, I am very open-minded and need to know about any and all pieces of exercise equipment, old or brand new, that might be of value to my business. While using the Nautilus machines, I was very disturbed to see my body lose its definition and to see my arms lose their contour, the peak in the biceps, for instance, and I began to get rather paranoid about viewing myself in the mirror. I even wanted to avoid mirrors. This was a very demoralizing experience, Joe. Joe. That's terrible, Arnold. I can imagine how you felt, the greatest and most muscular physique in the world being abused and defiled by a much overrated piece of fancy junk. Arnold. Well, Joe, this is the way I look at it. Even if training on the Nautilus machines did cause me to lose half an inch on my arms and cause other large muscles to actually get flabby and lack density and shape, I learned a lesson. Someone rightly philosophized that knowledge is power. I know now what to avoid, and you won't ever catch me on one of those Nautilus machines again. Joe, do you remember when I came in to have some photos taken after I came back from Arthur Jones' place in Florida? Remember that? Hell, I looked terrible. You yourself know how you've always been nice to me when I'm not exactly up to par, and you never really criticized me that much, but at the time, even you said I looked terrible. I'll never forget the look of disbelief on your face. That really clenched it. Joe, you did look terrible. I'll never forget that. You left here looking great, a firm, muscular 226 pounds with cuts galore. You were training very hard in between exhibitions, as I remember. Then you went to Florida and spent 14 days training on the Nautilus machines just to try it out so you could write an article about it for Muscle Builder. Arnold. Yes, and when I came back from Florida, you and others said I never looked so fat. I only gained 5 pounds when my condition was terrible. Arthur Jones fed me all these milkshakes, and it was fatty tissue I developed, not muscle. He wanted to prove that someone using his machines could gain weight. I gained weight all right, but the machines didn't do anything. Joe. That's what Franco said too. He was really upset about the pullover lat machine, especially since he could only do one exercise. You know how Franco likes to work his lats and lower back, but there was no variety and development suffers as a result. Oh, another thing, Arnold. When Franco was down there in Florida, he reports that Casey was there too, and then when Casey worked his lats on the Nautilus pullover machine, he also had to do 3 other exercises with other equipment to really develop his lats. Arnold. Since we're talking about Casey, I think we ought to bring up a few salient points that bodybuilders should know, especially since they probably read all the ads and articles about the Nautilus Machines in Iron Man magazine. Casey is not a product of Nautilus Machines or Arthur Jones' instruction. Casey was a damn good, excellently muscled bodybuilder long before that. I trained with Casey for those 14 days in Florida. We discussed training on Nautilus at length. Casey and Arthur Jones argued considerably. Jones wanted credit for Casey's magnificent development and wanted Casey to endorse his equipment. Casey simply called the machine a piece of blank. Casey wanted to do his barbell exercises, and Jones left the room very angry because he wanted to show off his Nautilus machines with Casey training on them. I don't know, Joe. You might not want to print words this strong in Muscle Builder, but it's the truth. Joe. As you know, Arnold, Muscle Builder prints the whole truth. Arnold. Good, because Casey never used the Nautilus in his training except for the pullover exercise. He told me this personally. Everything else was regular barbell, dumbbell, and standard exercises. This took place just a few months before the Mr. America contest, and most people actually felt he won this contest, even though he didn't, because he looked so great. Casey admitted to me many times that he didn't and still doesn't train on the Nautilus machines. He only used the Nautilus pullover machine because of his temporary bad back. The Nautilus pullover machine is adequate as a supplemental exercise in a pinch only. Joe. Sergio Oliva was in his worst shape before he went to England to compete with Bill Pearl in the Mr. Universe contest, and he looked bad at the contest too. Did the Nautilus have anything to do with this? Arnold. I know the whole story between Bill Pearl and Sergio. Bill Pearl wanted the machine because Arthur Jones told him Nautilus machines would make him into Mr. Universe. Bill ordered just the pullover and biceps machines and trained on them for 2 months. Then he called me up to tell me that he thought the machines were really bad, and what did I think of them? I told him that I also felt this way. Bill told me then that he'd never use them again. He said he wouldn't allow Arthur Jones to use them for publicity either. Sergio really looked smoothed out, even fat, after using the Nautilus machines, which allowed Bill Pearl to beat him for the Mr. Universe crown. Joe. Tell the readers how Bill Pearl beat the mighty Sergio Oliva for the Mr. Universe title since they both used Nautilus machines. Arnold. Bill Pearl used barbells, dumbbells, and other regular gym equipment before the contest, having discontinued using the Nautilus. Consequently, he was in his best shape ever. Sergio continued using the Nautilus machines right up to the contest, and as you know, He was in his worst shape. Joe. Arnold. I hear that a lot of bodybuilders get a good pump from the Nautilus machines. Arnold. Yes, but when they tell me this, it doesn't impress me much. The pump isn't everything. Swimming gives a good bodybuilder a good pump too. My legs, for instance, get extremely pumped when I swim a lot, but I don't gain muscular size from it. As a matter of fact, anyone that swims much will get a smooth appearance. This is what the Nautilus machines will do for you too. Joe. All in all, you don't find any virtue in these Nautilus machines. Arnold. I find there is no value to the machines and I would not recommend them to anyone. Everyone I know feels the same as I do. The only reason any of the bodybuilders I know of still use them is because of their mystique. That is to say, they hope there's still some secret to be discovered. But they soon found out that there isn't. So many bodybuilders, as you know so well, Joe, are trying to find an easy, effortless way to build muscle. And there just isn't an easy way, it's all hard work. Arthur Jones even promises that with the Nautilus machines, only 1/4 of the training that I do is required to produce a Mr. Universe physique. I just couldn't believe he said this, so I asked him about it. I said, you mean since I won the Mr. Universe title after 4 years of training, you could develop a Mr. Universe winner after only 1 year of training on your Nautilus machines? He backed off some then, but he still claims he can do it. Joe. How on earth could he say that? The machines don't work the abdominals, the lower back, doesn't really work the traps, the legs, etc. Arnold. I know, it's really ridiculous. The only thing it really does is prepare you for the hospital. I think it's nothing more than a sophisticated torture machine. In fact, Joe, Arthur Jones wants a person to stay on the machines until you can't possibly do any more, till you're completely fatigued and dizzy and fall off the machine. Then he says, does this ever happen when you use barbells and dumbbells? Naturally, you say no. Then he says, you see, the machine really works, doesn't it? He thinks that's proof, if you can believe that, Joe, that when you get dizzy and torture yourself, you're making progress. It's unbelievable. I can get this sort of ridiculous torture by running full blast down to San Diego on the freeway or whatever, but I'm not stupid. Joe. Arthur Jones is also trying to incorporate my Weider principles in the application of his machines. He uses supersets, flushing principles, etc. Arnold. Yes, that's right. It's the only sensible thing he does in his training. But you are the inventor of this, not Arthur Jones. But let's face it, Joe, even your perfected result-producing principles are useless unless the equipment is good. To sum it up, Joe, about all I can say is I don't think the Nautilus machines are any good for the modern bodybuilder in any way. Joe. Well, thank you, Arnold. I really appreciate you taking time out from your busy schedule for this interview. I'm sure that serious-minded bodybuilders everywhere will find your comments very beneficial. Arnold, glad to help you, Joe. I think it's about time the bodybuilder got a fair shake. Truth and honesty is the only way. I'm really happy to have a part in the truth you always print in Muscle Builder. You can always call upon me to help you in any way. Okay, I need a break before the second part. The second half of the article, somehow, is even worse. Our next interview will be with Franco Columbo. He is one of the finest bodybuilders of all time and a Mr. Universe winner. He is also one of the most powerful men of all time. You've all seen him in almost every issue of Muscle Builder lately. Franco is a very serious bodybuilder, demanding only the best exercise equipment available for his quality training and no nonsense. Joe. Franco, hey Franco, come over here a minute, will you please? Those secretaries will still be there when you're done with the interview. Franco. Hi, Joe. Say, you didn't tell me you hired that beautiful blonde. How come? Bill's note. They did just say no nonsense, right? Joe. Just because you have romantic Italian blood and look like one of those muscular Roman gods, you don't have to try to sweep every pretty girl off her feet. Franco. Oh, Joe. Hey, why didn't you tell me about her like you have something more important, huh? Joe. Yes, Franco. I'd like to interview concerning those Nautilus machines of Arthur Jones. I want to get your opinions on the advantages and disadvantages of these machines. First of all, Franco, what exactly is your experience with the Nautilus machines? Franco. My experience with the pullover machine is that it does only one thing, one movement, I mean, and it doesn't develop the back muscles fully. It can't. It's too limited, Joe. You know what I mean? You have to do so many other exercises like chinning, bent over rowing, lat pulley machine pulls, etc., to get good, well rounded development. The Nautilus machine cannot by itself develop the muscles fully. Joe. You mean then the Nautilus machine can't develop a good latissimus and lower back when using this machine alone? Franco. No, it can't do that at all. There's no way it can do that, Joe. Just one lousy exercise is all it can do. You know, the triangle bomber chinning exercise resembles the one exercise that is done on the Nautilus pullover machine. This pullover machine is so limited in its movement that the simple triangle bomber chinning exercise is far superior. With the triangle bomber apparatus, you can vary the position of your arms while chinning and it works the lats more fully, and you can arch your back for lower back development. This simple little piece of equipment used while chinning does a lot more than the Nautilus, and it doesn't cost hundreds of dollars. What I like is the triangle bomber only costs a little less than $10 and it's far superior. That means a lot to me, Joe. I don't like to waste money. Joe. In other words, you're saying that to obtain full development in the entire back, you have to do a large variety of exercises, not just one as you have to do on the Nautilus. Franco. Right. The Nautilus machine just can't do it. It's not even as good as just one simple barbell or dumbbell exercise. And there's another thing it does. I found this out when I was training for 1 month down in Florida. When using the pullover machine, I didn't use my hands very much because, the hands are placed on those pads and the main pressure is produced by the elbows when you do the pullovers. And when I came back here, I found my hands were weak. Of course, this might not seem like much to worry about to some bodybuilders, but I think it's very important. Barbells and dumbbells, etc., require that you hold them securely in your hands while doing your exercises. Thereby, you develop your grip and forearm muscles. You shouldn't have to do many other gripping exercises when you lift heavy weights. You know how I like the deadlift exercise, Joe. It's been one of my favorites because it's done so much for my development, and the Nautilus machine left my grip weak. I had to spend 2 weeks getting my grip back for my heavy 700-pound plus deadlifts. Joe. Yes, I know, Franco. That bad feature could also affect necessary gripping strength in the sport of weightlifting and other sports, too, where hand strength is important. Franco. Sure it could. Very much, in fact. And what good is having a lot of big, powerful muscles if your hands can't grip well? It's crazy. Besides, Joe, this was very detrimental to me when I went back into regular heavy training with heavy weights to build extreme muscle mass. Joe. What about sore joints? Franco. Yes, I did get sore elbows. You can't twist your wrists and move your arms on the Nautilus curling and tricep extension machines, and there's a lot of strain on the elbows. It really hurt a lot, and I personally don't like this. It could be dangerous. And the biceps machine only pumps the biceps a little bit and seems to help for 2 or 3 days because it's a new machine. Joe. Did you develop bigger arms, more definition, and a higher biceps peak? Franco. No, in fact, I got smoother, smaller and smoother. And when some mass is developed, it's smooth and flabby. It's loose, not trim, very puffy in appearance, and didn't look good at all. Too much bloated pump like Arnold got too, and not enough hard muscle size as a result. I lost my biceps peak and definition. And I just couldn't concentrate enough on these machines and vary the position like I can with barbells and dumbbells so I can forcibly work the deep muscle fibers thoroughly. Joe, did you find any benefits then that could be attributed to the Nautilus machines? Franco. Silence. Franco seemed to be at a loss to think of anything of real bodybuilding significance where the Nautilus was concerned. Joe. Or what good, if any, could these machines offer the bodybuilder in, say, of a unique sense? They must have some positive value. Franco. Well, I suppose they would come in handy if you had a sprained wrist or some other problem like a hurt back, wrenched knee, or something like that. The Nautilus pullover machine would allow you to get some exercise, better than nothing anyway. Franco. I'm sorry. Joe. Franco, do you use the Nautilus machines in your workout schedule? Franco. No, not at all anymore. I don't want any part of it. I only used them for a while because they were new machines. I wanted to see if they worked. I know now that they don't, so I don't bother with them. After all, I want to get bigger and more fully developed, not go backwards. As you know, Joe, even when using your flushing and superset principles like Arthur Jones says to use, copying your principles, the machines don't make it, no matter how hard you try. It's really frustrating. Take Casey, for example. In developing his back, he does one exercise on the Nautilus pullover machine, then another 4 exercises with barbells and dumbbells. He has to do this in order to get a good workout. The Nautilus is just a supplementary piece of equipment that doesn't have to exist. Joe Weider. Well, in conclusion, Franco, what do you have to say about the Nautilus machines? Franco. It's no good. Not good enough, I mean, and there's too much propaganda about it that's all out of proportion. I don't like the machines and I won't use them. That's all I have to say, Joe. Joe. Okay, Franco. Thank you for stopping by and letting me interview you. Our readers should know now from our interview that what the Nautilus has to offer the bodybuilder. You're free now to go talk to that blonde, Franco. Franco. I already got acquainted with her, Joe. How about introducing me to that pretty redhead over there by the window? How about it, Joe? Joe. Oh, all right. I don't know what I'm going to do with you, Franco. This concludes, thank God, part one of our interviews with the champs concerning the pros and cons of the famous Nautilus machines. The next issue of Muscle Builder will have the in-depth observations and experience of world-renowned Vince Gironda. Vince's undisputed reputation in the world of physical fitness and bodybuilding is legend. This will be good reading, I promise you. Don't miss it. Also, Ken Waller and Roger Kallard will be interviewed for still other professional opinions in Muscle Builder's two-part investigation of this highly controversial bodybuilding equipment. Regarding the Nautilus designs from 1971 to 1973, there was room for a critical analysis. Nautilus itself changed the size and shape of their cams. They went from cable to chain and sprocket, then later to Kevlar bands. They changed the angles that the movement arms work through. They had misinterpreted lockout, which led to increasing radius on all their cams, which is not how muscle torque curves work. They treated all joints as hinges, which they are for part of the range, but where they are not accounts for some of the joint strains mentioned in the article. Chains and sprockets made the lowering easier, the exact opposite of what Nautilus said was ideal. But none of that is in this article or in any of the following articles. And know that there was never a critical analysis of the Weider system. Trying to learn about proper exercise from the muscle magazines was like learning astronomy from Star Wars. You might pick up a stray fact or two, you might work really hard at following it, but it's still fiction. Sort of like learning from most social media today. Next time, as promised, moment arms, muscle torque curves, and what they are really documenting with the long length partials studies. Bill D. Simone, thanks for watching. Before you go, please use the buttons on screen to subscribe and for more videos. Feel free to leave comments and questions, and be sure to check out our print and Kindle books. Thanks for your interest in joint-friendly fitness.